and decide what we want to do, and you know, we can set it up. If you can't come in and set it up on that day, well then I can do it because somebody will help. But if you want to help with the coordinating of the decorating, me and you have to get together. Well, we're going to decide and we're going to do it. Done. Just me and you. No, we don't have. We've got the permission that we need, and that's it.
Okay, so there's one. So anytime, just let me know.
Give me your number again,
Yes.
and I think you got mine. I'll give it to you again.
You're my backup to down.
Yeah. Hello everyone, welcome to Central Florida Facilitators. I now call this meeting to order. It's so good to see everybody, I've missed you. Our club mission statement. We provide a supportive and positive learning experience in which members are empowered to develop communication and leadership skills, resulting in greater self-confidence and personal growth. Through this mission, each Toastmaster gains a clear understanding of the club's purpose, and the organization as a whole benefits from a shared set of values and goals. That is our new mission statement, in case you are not familiar with it. Also, I'm going to ask you if you have any cell phones or anything that makes noise, if you could please turn it off, put it on vibrate or anything like that. If anyone needs to use the restroom, you go out this door here, you make your first left, and the bathroom will be on to your left just prior to going out. Okay? So tonight, I am going to give you a thought. Failure is not fatal, but failure to change may be. With that, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, help me welcome our president, Ms. Toni G.
Hello, welcome to Central Florida Facilitators Toastmaster Club. We are called the Facilitators for 3 reasons. One, we were sponsored initially by the Central Florida chapter of the American Society of Training and Development. That is the premier organization for professional facilitators. 2, a good facilitator needs to be a strong communicator and an effective leader, and that's what Toastmasters is all about, what our club meetings are about, leadership and communication skills. And 3, to facilitate means to make things simple and easy, and that's what we hope to do for you this evening, as well as demonstrate what our regular meeting looks like. Our guests, we hope you have a good time. We know all of you are working toward different goals, and we hope you get some value out of the evening tonight, and especially for our guests. And we do have some guests tonight, and we'd like to recognize them. Returning is Linda Earls. Wanna stand up from
I'm becoming a regular visitor. I did check out the Apopka foliage Monday night meeting, and that is really close to my house, but I still really like your group too.
All right, thank you, Linda. And we have a first-time guest. Could you stand up and tell us your name and how you found us?
My name is Melody, and I found you guys because I'm a roommate for a while.
All right. Very good. We're happy to have you here. Thank you. And we have Steve in the corner, who's a Toastmaster.
Hi, everybody. I'm associated with this man right here, Stephen Morgan, out of Lake Mary Toastmasters, Panera Bread, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And last but not least, and very smiley back there, is
Hi, I'm
Elda.
Elda, and I heard about Toastmasters from my VP of my company. He explained that to us a few months ago, and I decided to try it.
So,
So you're here for the very first time as well. Okay. Do all of our guests have guest packets or some kind of information? Yeah. Okay, that's great. If you should have an agenda too. If you don't, we'll get you one. Stephen, we need an extra one.
here's one here.
Oh, there's some on the table for Elda, so she could, yeah, so she could follow along. Yeah. The award certificates? Thanks, ma'am. Tonight is what we call a regular meeting. It follows a particular agenda, which you have in front of you. The purpose of the agenda, again, is to promote the leadership portion of our program, to learn to run an efficient meeting, to create the team, and you'll see that people have roles, and our members will be doing different assignments this evening, and they'll all tell you about their assignments. And that was all coordinated by the Toastmaster as well as the individual that's called the General Evaluator. So a lot was done in preparation for the meeting. And welcome, Jessica. We missed you. We do have voting, and there's a lot that's going to be timed this evening. If you care to vote, there's ballots for your favorite speakers, your favorite evaluators. That's all fine, even if you're just visiting for the first time, if you're so inclined to do that. And there's a portion of our meeting called Table Topics where you will be invited to participate, but only if you would like to do so. And you'll see an example of what that is, so we don't frighten you away before we invite you to participate. This is the end of a 6-month term for our group. Next week is actually our awards banquet and our new officer installation. We will be meeting here, and you all have a handout that describes the meeting place and the time, a little bit about the event. For our guests, if you'd like to attend, just RSVP to me. There's a phone number and an email on the paper that you have. In addition, for our members, I think all of you except Ro, you said you weren't available next week, right, to come to the meeting. I'm assuming you all will be here. If you're bringing guests, please just let me know how many. Gail's preparing the food, and that would be important for her to know. And as far as setting up the room as well, we want to be sure that that's done properly. The following week, we will have one final meeting of this term, and I didn't get to talk to Lynn about that. I don't know if she has anything special planned, but we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. Okay. Are you sending a sign-up sheet around?
Yes.
Okay, so do you have it set up with speakers and table topics like a regular meeting? So one more chance, Jonathan. Speech in there. All right, following that, a very, very, very special event, June 30th, and there's information again on your handout. This is the 10th anniversary of the chartering of our club, June 30th, 2003. So we're having a special party. We've invited over 200 past members and friends of the club to that event. The invitation went out last week. Please forward the invitation to anybody that you would like to invite that's a Toastmaster member or that's interested in networking and finding out about Toastmasters. It'll be, of course, an amazing group of people. Most of them have been members of this club, so they're part of our family. July 3rd, reminder, no meeting. July 10th will be the first meeting of the next session, and at the end of June, our final meeting, we'll I guess get to work on slowly, and you'll figure out how you want to sign up people for July 10th for that meeting. All right, Stephen, I was just trying to get the announcements out of the way at the beginning. I know we've got a packed schedule. So if there's any questions, just let me know at the end. Send me an email. The most important thing is we find out who you're bringing to our two big events. In addition, I've distributed a list for next week on this sheet of paper. We've got different committees. Some of you have agreed to be committee heads. Some of you have not, so please read the information. You'll all be participating. If you don't see your name on there, just show up and help out and welcome guests and enjoy yourselves. So with that, let's get to the meeting. Oh, and does anybody have manuals to go to somebody. I need someone to evaluate me as the evaluator. Anybody want to do that? Actually, you're okay to do that? Stephen wrote his first computer program on the Atari 800 when he was in 5th grade. He later graduated to the Commodore 64, the best-selling computer in history, and one which occupies many fond memories for him, as well as a box in his garage. Stephen earned his Bachelor of Science degree. Oh, what? No, I'm not the Toastmaster.
Right. Keep going.
Thank you, though. You're confused. Welcome.
I haven't been here for a while.
For our guests, we get to make mistakes here. This is a training program. And I know you don't understand what happened, but that's all right. She was trying to be helpful. Let's see. Stephen earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Engineering Science and his Master of Science degree in Computer Engineering from the University of Florida. He has been a full-time Java developer for over 10 years with several companies, including Harris Corporation, AAA, Object Space, Intervoice, I don't know how to say this one, Convergys, yeah, close enough, Foxio, and Computer Associates. Stephen has been published in IEEE Spectrum, and he's also taught Java as an adjunct professor at Seminole Community College. He can often be found tinkering, repairing, and programming his own computers, as well as those of friends, family, and clients. Our Toastmaster this evening, please welcome Stephen Moore.
Thank you, Toni. The bane of computer programmers all around is the afternoon storms that come plowing through Central Florida every day. It happened a few times at first when I was living in Melbourne, and in actuality Melbourne doesn't get near as bad as here, that I had quite a few computers end up getting fried by the lightning strikes in some fashion or form. And it seemed to be, it wasn't always just the computer. Sometimes it was just the modem, back when the modems were this little separate extra box that really just called on the phone. And I had a few of those get knocked out, and they weren't even plugged into the power. They were getting it through the phone lines. Alas, it's gotten to the point where in order for me to keep my systems at home, of which I have many computers at home at this point, several desktops and of course a few laptops about, I have now the uninterrupted power supplies everywhere. Because it wasn't always a lightning strike that took them out. Sometimes it was just progressive energy. Regressive energy, as I tend to call them, as that seems to be the type of service that we get. Very dirty power can knock out a whole bunch of great electronics, sadly. But how do we end up getting these summer storms coming through Florida? The physics is a bit more confusing, as with all weather phenomena. It's never very easy to predict in any way. But the best knowledge that we have, being that Florida is this big peninsula sticking out between the Gulf and the Atlantic, as a result of those of us here in the middle of the state, there are breezes coming in from both sides. When they both come in off both the Gulf and the Atlantic Ocean, they come across land. When they come across land, the land has been heated up by the sun. So on these hot days in the summer, the air comes in, gets hot, rises up, pulls the moisture that's being evaporated at the same time. And as they get up to the point where it's higher in the atmosphere, it's cooler, then it starts to condense. Now all these particles start hitting each other and the clouds start to form. And by the time we've hit the middle of the day, there's enough energy up there that it just explodes out with the thunderstorms we see. Sometimes you can schedule your watch by it, which we had a couple of times this week already, but not today, so far anyway. I'm sure we all have a few stories of our storms throughout Florida. And as you're going to get to tell those stories, we're going to have a few people listening very closely and letting you know what's going on. Our technical table would like to give us a little bit of guidance and correction, which is what we seek when we come here. First, with our grammarian, if you will explain what you will be doing for the guests and everyone.
realize she was introducing the Toastmaster. I thought she was introducing a speaker, meaning she would forget about us, which would not let happen. So today I am the grammarian, and the word of the day is expansive, having a wide range, open, and communicative. I will keep track of those who use the word of the day. For those who have a chance to speak and do not use the word of the day, they will be fined 25 cents. Guests and members who have not yet given their icebreaker speech will not be fined. I will also listen for colorful imagery and exceptional use of vocabulary and grammar. At the end of the meeting, I will report on grammar usage and suggest where I see improvements can be made. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Pat. Taking on the role of Wizard of Oz today. Made it just in time. Jessica Guthrie, please explain what you do.
Good evening, everyone. My job this evening is to keep track of audible clutches, and you'd be surprised at the expansive choices we have for audible clutches, but specifically I'm going to be looking for ahs, ums, and double clutches, which is the repetition of a word while you're trying to search for another word. I will also note sentences strung together with bridge words, making compound sentences like and so, blah, blah, blah. And I will sound a buzzer when each of these infractions are heard. And I'm a very happy buzzer hitter, so watch out. Here we go. The fine for each infraction is 10 cents. Guests and members who have not yet done their icebreaker will not be buzzed or fined, but I will keep track of their infractions so that you are aware of how you're doing. Mr. Toastmaster.
Our timer this evening, Rose Sasser, please explain what you will be doing.
This one has an expansive explanation of what the timer is. One of the skills the Toastmasters practice is expressing a thought within a specific time. As a timer, I'm responsible for monitoring time for each speaker in each meeting segment. I will operate the timing signal indicating to each speaker how long he or she has been speaking. For our prepared speeches to qualify for voting, speakers must speak not less than 30 seconds under their minimum range and not more than 30 seconds over their maximum. I will turn on the green light at minimum rate at the range minimum. Oh, sorry. The yellow light, green light at range minimum, the yellow light at mid-range, and the red at range maximum. For table topic speakers to qualify, speakers must speak at least 1 minute and no more than 2 minutes 30 seconds. A green light will occur at 1 minute, a yellow at 1.5, and a red at 2. For evaluations to qualify, evaluators must speak a minimum of 1 minute, 30 seconds, and a maximum of 3 minutes, 30 seconds. A green light at 2 minutes, a yellow at 2.5, a red at 3 minutes.
And our supervisor of elections here to explain her role, our guest still, Linda.
As vote counter, I will pick up your ballots. I have a very simple prop, unlike the ladies to my right. And for best speaker, best table topic speaker, and best evaluator, and most improved, I will tally the results for the award presentations at the end of the meeting. I will also pick up any comments you might have written for the speakers or any meeting participant and deliver them to the comments to the appropriate person. Thank you. And I'd like to say, because of I do not have an expansive budget, so I will get that out of the way right away, so I don't have to pay the quarter. As a Toastmaster.
And the last peak of part, the last bit of record keeping to get straight here, since Gail has not made it, our guest Steve Wagner, himself a Toastmaster, has stepped into the role of evaluator for Charlie's speech. It was 2 days ago, when we were just finished working out and we were driving home. And of course we see, by this point it's early mid-afternoon, and we see all the thunderheads popping off in the distance, you can see there's rain starting to fall as they're driving south and it's coming up to the south. Looking at it going, oh, we were thinking, oh, we'll stop at the store and get a few things. But I take a look at the radar, since I can look it up on the phone, looking at it going, I don't think going to the store right now would be a good idea. I think we'll be lucky if we get home before we get hammered by this thing. Once upon a time, it wouldn't be as easy to try and figure that out. As it was, we did get home just as the first drops were falling, and we ended up with a pretty substantial and expansive cell coming right over the house, scaring our dogs to no end. And for an hour and a half, we were holed up in there waiting for things to pass. Before then, it would be safer to get out and go about our business doing some other things. Weather phenomena, we have a lot of systems that try to predict and monitor the weather. We have the satellite systems that are out in space. We have various monitors settled all around the country and radars. Interestingly enough, though, the satellite system has probably been the most effective for us here, since it helps us to monitor the hurricanes as they form out to sea and track their movements, because we don't have sensors all across the ocean. We take our measurements of the temperature and the humidity out at sea from way up there. But we've been losing access to those satellites as they've been getting older, and there has not been a budget allowing more satellites to be built and put back up. And with the particular interest in Congress of let's just cut things that we don't know what we're cutting, it seems like, oh, we don't need all the satellites when we've got them out there. Well, it's not just for those of us here, although they do tell us where the hurricanes are at sea and help us to track and help us to evacuate when we can. Shipping lines need to know what's going on at sea because they need to steer around these things. You don't want to drive a big ship through the center of a hurricane because those waves will go 90 to 100 feet from peak to trough, or worse. What it might take to get the National Oceanographic and Aeronautical Association the budget they need, because they're the ones who put up the satellites, NOAA and OAA, and they're the ones that are the administration over the National Weather Service. Yeah, it's annoying to get a lot of those alerts, but I'd rather be getting the alerts in time to prepare. So sometimes there are a few services I suspect we get that are worthwhile. But there are much more interesting things to hear about, such as from our speakers. Moving into our first speaker. He has been with Toastmasters on and off for 4 years. Now that he has a passion for a cause close to his heart, he is committed to become the best speaker he can be. The only way to achieve his goals is by attending Toastmasters and learning from the other excellent speakers. Please help me welcome Charlie Bumbelier, speaking from the Advanced Communication Manual, The Entertaining Speaker, and this is project number 4, Dramatic Talk. So welcome Charlie Bumbelier and his speech, The Sound of Silence.
When I'm in the sound of silence, sometimes I can hear his heartbeat. I can even hear him breathing if it's really quiet. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. The story that I'm about to tell you is about one of the greatest secrets in the United States, the breaking of a child's will. And I heard it firsthand from Victor. He told me that when he was 7 years old, he was taken out of a normal household because of illness to his family and put with someone that was supposed to be a caretaker and a loving person. It happened to be another family member. Happened to be from an institution, a religious institution. Imagine, if you will, the culture shock that this boy received within the first 24 hours of being put in this institution. It wasn't 30 minutes that he can recall that he was told if he did not say yes sir, no sir, he would be punished. And sure enough, being 7 years old, it wasn't an hour until he forgot and he got punished. Then he was put into a place where he'd never been before, in a strange atmosphere. He was taken into this huge building and it split. One part was a boarding school for girls and the other was a boarding school for boys. Most of them were teenagers in the range of 12 to actually 20 years old, maybe even older. The humiliation, the torture that he witnessed with his eyes, it's almost beyond speech. But to give you an example, they were tied with their hands stripped naked above their heads and whipped from both sides, and it was nuns and it was priests in each category. The girls or the boys, it didn't matter. Modesty did not exist in this place. That was just one of the punishments. Isolation, deprivation of bathroom, deprivation of food. Shortly after that, Victor got out of this foreign country and came to the United States with the same family member. This time, it was a house, just his family member and him. So now, his punishment got isolated because this sadistic pedophile didn't have anyone else to harm other than this one boy. For 8 years, he suffered this. The worst punishments that he really got, that Victor can recall, were 2. Actually, there was 3, because the feeling of abandonment was one of the most horrible feelings that he got, because he felt he was abandoned by everyone. The other one was the face-slapping sessions whenever this family member decided that he disobeyed. And the third was really the worst, being grabbed by the hair while still naked and beat up with welts and thrown into a closet, which he made into a very dark room where he couldn't see his hand in front of his face. How many days? He has no clues that he would stay there. He was only allowed out once during this whole time, every day, to be bathed, to be fed, and then back into the dark room. Today, he grew out of that and he managed to survive. And he's now the director for an organization for the state of Florida called SIA, Survivors of Institutional Abuse. And the reason that's so important is because Florida is the 3rd largest recruiting expansive business in this state. It has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. It takes away the dignity, it takes away the hope that one has as a child, and it's a perpetual punishment for each and every abused child in this country. We are focusing on the state of Florida because that happens to be where I lived, and it's the 3rd largest in abuse. In 1984, Florida legislature passed a law that prevents any other official government from investigating these places if they have a religious background. They just have to call themselves religious. They cannot investigate. They gave it to a nonprofit organization called FACA, Florida Children's Care Unit. I can't even remember the name. This board members happen to be the owners of these organizations. So it's the fox guarding the hen house. We're trying to change that. That's one of the focus that we're doing at this moment. And I urge you to find out more about it as I pass out these brochures for you. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you. Charles Victor Bumbler. Madam Timer, will you give us 1 minute on the clock? And for the guests in particular, so you know, we have these informal evaluation forms about it. If we don't have one, we can pass one back. Just give you the opportunity to write any feedback you may have to the speaker so that he can get some more feedback and points of view in his speech. And both Karen will be able to pick those up from him, like, come around and pick up out there. This time, I have the honor to present to you the thought leader of the Facilitators. I have the pleasure to present to you Advanced Communicator Bronze, Jonathan Dunn.
Imagine, if just for a moment, an old episode of The Three Stooges. And if that doesn't work for you, imagine yourself after you have had 5 cocktails too many. Not you got drunk, but you got drunk and then had 5 cocktails too many. If you are able to imagine either of those items, you can perfectly get a glimpse of what it looked like 2 weekends ago when my daughter Kaylee and myself put our canoe in upstream into the Wekiva River and headed to the springs to do some swimming. My fellow Toastmasters, most distinguished guests, several tonight, nice to see. Where do you put your canoe in the stream? Upstream? Or do you put it in downstream? We hadn't gone more than 100 yards when my daughter, who was 14, I'll do my best to imitate her, started screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy! Look over there, there's an alligator!" I glanced over, and sure enough, about 50 feet ahead, there was an alligator sunning himself on a log. He was about 8 feet long, biggest alligator I have ever seen in the springs. She wanted me to get her out of that situation as soon as humanly possible. And she was very loud about it. You know how children sometimes go to their parents for solutions? Have you ever been there and done that? So what do you think I did? I screamed too. I soiled my pants a little bit. It was a very scary moment because as soon as I looked over at him, Murphy's Law, he rolled into the water, and to me, was coming right at us. In reality, I saw an amazing opportunity here. I knew exactly what my daughter was experiencing, as I've experienced it no less than 1,000,000 times. She was having a fun day, she was having joy, she was in her little box box that all of us are probably familiar with. And anything that invaded that box, all we want it to do is go away. Just go away and let us get back to our joy. I felt it a month ago. Just put my head in the sand and let it go away, no effort. But this time would be different. Like a bottle of wine that had aged just a perfect amount of time, in my case, about 40 years, I was actually ready to be a father. And I did something that I know that I've needed to do a long time. I let my actions speak louder than any words that I was going to speak. With that said, I did calmly say paddle right so that we could go left, very calmly, and I just paddled as hard as I could. We both knew at precisely the same time that the alligator was no threat, which it probably never was. And it was a priceless moment when she turned around in the canoe and actually stood up a little bit, which was big for her, and high-fived me. She knew that something magical would happen, that she couldn't go to her dad every time. She knows I'm there, but she knew that to get out of that situation, that she had to respond with her ability. And for a 14-year-old girl, she showed a tremendous amount of responsibility. And it made her feel good inside that I didn't just bail her out. As we continued to trudge along upstream, and the current was strong that morning, it slowed us down a lot. Slow's not something I do well, as you may know. But I made the observation, there was turtles, there was fish, there was lots of fauna, there was some I wouldn't say storms, but some sprinkling happening on the trees. And it sounded beautiful. And we got up to our destination, and it was time to turn around after we did a little swimming. The current was going strong upstream, so downstream, we didn't have to do hardly anything. We drank some water, we had some snacks, donuts to be exact. We both really like Dunkin' Donuts. And we just let the downstream current take us kind of where it would go. We rested, we were in relationship. It was a beautiful, beautiful bonding moment. Right as we got back to the dock and we're getting ready to tie off, a water moccasin comes popping out of the rocks. It's like rocks, dock, and it was in between it, popped out at us. Didn't have to say a word. Kaylee started pedaling away, and for once, my complete lack of athletic ability, yes, it's true, served me for once. And I swung at the snake, completely missed, almost fell out of the canoe, but I hit a rock, and with her steering, we ended up out of harm's way. And I actually think that really was harm's way there. So we moored off, and we were debriefing on the way back to the car. I didn't want to say anything, believe it or not. I said, Kaylee, what'd you learn about going upstream? Well, it was harder on my muscles, Dad, so I guess I got stronger. And we saw lots of things, so I was exposed to lots of things. What'd you think about going downstream? I was tired, so I needed the rest, but I noticed we didn't see any turtles, hardly saw any fish, because we were just coasting along. I said, how'd you feel about the alligator incident? She goes, I was really scared. I said, really? She goes, but it felt good when we got out of the way. It felt really good. It was really exciting. It was exhilarating. So my advice to you, based upon looking at this through the eyes of a child, they can teach us a lot, maybe more than we can even teach them. Do something every day that scares you. And I almost forgot, the snake was a neat piece. So I said, Kaylee, we went upstream, we went downstream, we were resting, we were having fun, all of a sudden the snake pops out at us. What'd you think about that? There was probably 30 people in the vicinity. So she fingers me over like that. She hails me and I'm like, just tell me what you thought about the snake. She goes, Dad, I need you to come over here. I'm like, all right, I'll humor her, so I walk over. She goes up to my ear and she goes, Dad, shit happens. Mr. Toastmaster.
Item timer, 1 minute. Everyone take the opportunity to provide some comments to Jonathan on his speech. Tonight, Julian Cotto will be presenting project number 5 from the Advanced Communication Manual Storytelling. This is the Bringing History to Life project. He will be presenting a short story on the life of Phoebe Mosey, better known as Annie Oakley. Annie was a sharpshooter and the first woman celebrity in the United States in 1890. Her life and accomplishments are an example to both men and women. Julian will be presenting the story as if Annie were telling the story through him. So here to complete his Advanced Communicator bronze, please help me welcome for the last time as a competent Toastmaster, Julian Cotto, presenting Annie.
It was Thanksgiving Day, 1875. The Bachman and Butler sharpshooting act was in Cincinnati. Bachman and Butler were the 2 top sharpshooters in the United States at that time. And that day, when they came into town, was the day that changed my life. You see, I was born in Willowdale, Drake County, Ohio, about 10 miles west of Cincinnati. Willowdale was a little know-nothing town in that expansive wilderness at the foothills of the mountains. I was the 5th child out of 7, and we were dirt, poor. Daddy would grow food and hunt and trap, but it wasn't enough. It just barely fed the family. I used to love the outdoors, so I used to go out with Daddy all the time hunting and trapping, ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. We used to go out all the time, and he would show me all the tricks of hunting and trapping. I loved that time with Daddy. When I was 5, in 1865, there was a bad blizzard, and Daddy got caught taking supplies to the mill. By the time he had gotten home, Daddy was frostbitten. 2 days later, Daddy died. Mom was weak. Mama couldn't take care of the kids. We were too many of them. She was just having a hard time just feeding us every day. So one day Mama tells me, Phoebe girl, I'm just having a hard time with all of you kids. I'm just having a hard time just getting food on the table, Phoebe. Phoebe, and there's this couple, his name is Clark and Nancy Eddington. And they've got a few kids, and they need some help around the house. And they promised to take you in and take care of you, and you help them around the house, and they seem like really nice folks. So Phoebe, I want you to go live with them. Mom, I don't want to go, Mama. Mama, don't send me with those people. It's okay, honey. Everything will be just right, said Mrs. Eddington. The Eddingtons put up a good front, but deep inside, they were rotten as wolves. I became their little slave girl. I had to hunt, trap to bring them fresh meat every day. Had to take care of the kids. I had to clean the house, wash the clothes, feed the animals, and darn the socks at night. And every once in a while, Mr. Eddington would take advantage of me physically too. They were wolves in sheep's clothing, all right. I hardly ever talk about that part of my life. I just refer to them as the wolves, because that just makes me sick. By the time I was 10, I had gotten really good at hunting and trapping. And one day I had been hunting and trapping all day along with doing my chores, and I was darning the socks at night. I was just so tired, I fell asleep. And that she-wolf, Mrs. Eddington, got so upset with me that she threw me outside in the snow barefooted. I was so cold. I was freezing to death. If it wasn't that Mr. Eddington brought me in when he did, I would have froze to death. I got so sick that I was bedridden for over a week. And after that, I decided I'm not going to stay here anymore. I'm going to run away and go back home. Hey, Mama. Phoebe, what are you doing here, girl? I collapsed in my mama's bosom, and I must have cried for 2 days straight. By the time I was 10, I was really good at hunting and trapping. And I was so good that I not only was able to provide food for the family, but also to make extra money by selling the game. By the time I was 13, I had made enough money to pay the mortgage on the house. And I even started to get a reputation around these parts. Folks started calling me Little Short Shot. Folks actually believed that I could shoot the wings off a fly. Imagine that. But I hated my name, Phoebe Mosey. So I started calling me Annie. Annie Oakley. In Thanksgiving Day, 1875, Justin Butler and his partner had come into town, and they had put a $100 bet with Frank Frost, the hotel owner. He told Frank, he says, Frank, I bet you $100 that I can beat anybody shooting in this town. Well, Jack Frost wasn't the type of guy that would pass up a bet like that. So he called out to his boy, Sam. He said, Sam, go fetch Annie. So Sam rode all the way out to my house to get me for the shootout. I'll never forget Mr. Butler's face when I showed up. There was this 15-year-old little girl, 5 foot tall, 90 pounds soaking wet, here to challenge Mr. Big Shot, Mr. Butler. I was scared. But Mr. Frost pulled me over to the side and said, Andy, girl, I've seen you shoot. And you're good. You can beat this Butler guy. You can beat this two-bit clown girl. You go out there, I'm betting on you. You go out there and beat them. And as I was gathering my thoughts, I remembered what Daddy used to tell me when we go out hunting and trapping. He'd say, Phoebe, aim high and you'll hit your mark. Maybe not the first time, nor the second, and maybe not even the third time. But you keep on aiming and you keep on shooting. And with practice, you'll become perfect. And then you'll hit your mark every time. You know, and those words of Daddy, I always kept close to my heart. And it got me through a lot of hard times. We lined up, ready for the shootout. Me and Mr. Butler. I held my rifle steady in my hands. The judge called out, ready, set, pull, bang, bang, pull, bang, bang, pull, bang, bang. Butler and I went round and round, round and round, round and round, 49 times. And then the 50th time, pull, bang, bang. Mr. Butler missed, and I hit my mark. And that was the day that changed my life. Mr. Butler was so impressed with my shooting that he took me on his shooting show, and we traveled the whole country, me and his partner, and we went to every city and did exhibitions everywhere. As a matter of fact, he married me. And later on, we ended up in the Buffalo Bill Wild West show. They even had Chief Sitting Bull as part of the cast. It was the biggest show in the whole United States, if not the world. I even went to England and performed in front of the king and queen. I had become the first woman celebrity in these here United States. And Frank and I, we were married for over 50 years, till death do us part. And if a little girl from Willowdale in Drake County, Ohio, can do it, I'm betting that you can do it too. Aim high, hit your mark. No, you may not hit it the first time or the second or even the third, but you keep on aiming, you keep on shooting, and with practice you'll become perfect. And then you'll hit your mark every time. If I can do it, you can too. Mr. Toastmaster.
Set a timer 1 more minute. We can all provide our feedback to Julian on his speech. Of course, the fun part of our thunderstorms is when the lightning pops out and strikes leaving, of course, the big crack that scares you makes you jump. The formation of lightning, we actually don't know the whole process, believe it or not. But what we have figured out is when all of those droplets of water are colliding way up in the clouds, part of the results is they start exchanging electrons, and then the negatively charged atoms tend to aggregate at the bottom of the cloud, and the positively charged ones go to the top. So the bottom of the cloud is negatively charged, the top is positively charged. The ground is more positive than the bottom of the cloud, and sometimes when the voltage gets high enough, the potential, eventually the air arcs, causing the lightning bolt to try to pass through. Those bolts actually are not the ones that seem to be so bad, though they're powerful enough to kill if they hit you. What's more interesting is when a bolt originates from the top of the cloud, which doesn't happen very often since it's positively charged. But when it does, the bolts that come from the top are orders of magnitude more powerful than the ones that you see coming from the bottom. And the power that's involved in those is so strong that those bolts can travel up to 10 miles in a shot. And that's where you get the term of a bolt out of the blue. A lightning bolt that did come from that storm you see way out in the distance, even though it's clear here. But it can travel that far, coming up from the top of the cloud. Thankfully, we don't have near that many of problem over here. Hopefully, you won't have to experience one of those. In the meantime, you'll just have to experience the terror of table topics. Table topics continues a long-standing Toastmasters tradition. Every member speaks at a meeting. But it's about more than just carrying on an anxiety-ridden tradition. Table topics is about developing your ability to organize your thoughts quickly and respond to an impromptu question or topic. Lynn Ayers is honored to be our table topics master this evening. Please help me welcome Lynn.
Thank you, Stephen. Fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests. Tonight, our theme is stormy weather. The purpose of table topics is to help us practice our impromptu speaking and to give our members an opportunity to speak who haven't had a role in our meeting. Please keep your response to 1 to 2 minutes and remember to use the word of the day, which is expansive. Tell us about the worst weather you have ever encountered, Pat.
The worst weather that I have ever encountered, I want to say it was a couple years back when we had those repeated hurricanes. I don't know if it was Charlie or whoever. Nonetheless, you know how everybody says go into the bathroom or go into the hallway or something like that. Just blow it all off. It's not that big of a deal. Well, I happen to be looking out the window to look at the storm. Does anybody do that? Or go outside and see what it feels like? Anyway, looking out the window, and all of a sudden there was this big, like, crack of lightning, and one of the transformers blew, and the trees came falling down. I went screaming and standing right in the middle of the hallway. Oh my God, you know, what am I going to do now? That was pretty traumatic. We did have a tree land on the house. Fortunately, it didn't go through, but it did land on the house. I think that was probably the scariest moment for me. I would not really enjoy being in any tornadoes. I do not like hurricanes, and lightning is terribly scary. And when you talked about out of the blue, I remember my husband, who's always very protective, talking about this kind of stuff, and you know, I just blow everything off. Since that episode in the hallway, I don't blow everything off. Thank you.
Have you ever been stranded somewhere due to bad weather, Pat? Patty.
Fellow Toastmasters? Yes. The Atlanta airport. hurricane, all flights canceled to Florida, and there were more people than you could imagine crammed in this airport, in this lobby, in the restaurants, in the restrooms. You couldn't walk, you couldn't eat, you couldn't concentrate. It was hot. And to top it all off, what I remember the most was the service from AirTran. Don't fly it. Don't fly AirTran. No food, dirty bathrooms, no tissue, no room to sit, no room to put your luggage. They dumped everything, lines wrapped around the world, nobody answered your questions, all because flights were canceled due to the hurricane. And finally, this was the first time I ever had to sleep in a dirty, crowded, smelly, noisy, stinky airport, waiting to go from Atlanta to Orlando. How many hours is that? Huh? Can you believe? 9 hours. Felt like 3 days. Until finally, it pays to be polite, and it pays to be kind, and it pays to be nice. And if you treat people nicely, they will remember you. And because you're polite and you say, would you please help me? What do I need to do to get out of Georgia and fly? And tell me anywhere you want in Florida. Anywhere you want. How do I do that? Suddenly someone calls my name, come up to the podium. They said, Ms. Herrera, we have booked you to Fort Lauderdale. Is that okay? I said yes. I dragged my stuff, sat and waited, was the third person to board. And of course, I had to now figure out how to get forward and back to Orlando, but that was the easy part. So really, my experience with bad weather was being stranded at the Atlanta airport. When my friend wow, I know we're starting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
You all are getting very good at this, so I think I'm going to change it up a little.
It's an easy topic.
Complete this sentence and weave a story from it. It was a dark and stormy night. Light flashed through the window pane. Distinguished Toastmaster Jessica.
It was actually a dark and stormy night. And there was actually lightning outside the window pane. When I was very young, I had the opportunity to travel quite a lot. And I left Florida with my family and traveled all the way through to New Zealand on a boat. Once we were in New Zealand, we lived there for about 6 months, and then we went to Australia, and that's where all the fun started. We had the worst weather in every country we visited. We went to Australia, dark, stormy night. We are taking a bus, and we take the bus to an area called Coober Pedy, which is where they mine opals in the middle of the desert in Australia. Stormy, pouring rain. We're planning to go to Ayers Rock, which is a little bit like Georgia Stone Mountain, which is a huge mountain. It's all red clay in the middle of the desert, and we couldn't get there because the roads were getting flooded out, which had never, ever happened before in the history of known documentation of weather in Australia. Oh well, that does happen. We go to Hong Kong next. The worst typhoons they've had in 20 years. We leave Hong Kong, we go to Thailand. Worst floods they've had in 20 years. The water in the streets were up to here, and they said that was the worst they had ever seen it. And apparently the recent floods they had are the first time they've had floods that bad since then. Well, the next part was really fun because we were on our way to India, and it was right before the monsoon season was supposed to start. So we were like, oh, it's coming. We know, we're bringing it everywhere we go. We get to India, and it doesn't start, which is fantastic, except when's the hottest time of year? Right before the monsoon. 120 degrees, boiling hot. And the trick is you go to these beautiful monuments, and think about this. The Taj Mahal, all white marble. You have to take your shoes off in order to go into the Taj Mahal. And our family would gently take about 5 steps, and then all 4 of us are giant running as fast as we can to get inside because we're all getting so burned. So on one hand, we got poured on. On one hand, we had all the heat, but man, did we see some awesome places. Madam Table Clerk.
Would one of our guests like to try? Steve?
He's evaluating. Sure.
Steve, would you like to try?
Sure.
Okay. It was, oh, we've already done that. Tabletop Toastmaster is exempt. Have you ever had a vacation ruined or canceled because of the weather? Tell us about it.
Thank you. Ruined by weather. Fortunately, I've never had that situation happen before. But I have been to Hawaii recently, last year. And in Hawaii, there are two parts of the island. One is the wet side, and one is the dry side. Now, I used to live in Hawaii for a year, so I kind of got a little bit of feeling of the islands a little bit, I thought. And when I was there, I had an opportunity to ride a motorcycle. Well, I said, on one side of the island is wet, one side of the island is very dry. It's like night and day. And I was driving my motorcycle up through the mountains. I got a little bit wet. But Hawaii is just a very beautiful place, and even though you're wet, it's still a nice place to be at work. So I was riding my motorcycle, and I had a friend of mine on the back also. We were going through the winding roads to Hana, and we took one little side, and there was moss on the side of the road. But as we went around a little bit, I was a little bit worried about falling off my motorcycle. It started to clear up. And we started going up and down a mountain over there. And unfortunately, got about halfway to our destination, I turned around and go back. I had to go back into the rain again, get a little bit wet, and get a little bit dry again. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience. That wasn't quite that bad, but it was a rather enjoyable experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we don't have time for an expansive number of questions tonight. I believe I'm going to ask for a timer's report from our timer, Rose.
Charlie, required time was 5 minutes to 7 minutes. He spoke for 6 minutes, 35 seconds. He qualifies. Jonathan was required to speak between 5 to 7 minutes. He spoke for 7 minutes, 27 seconds. He qualifies. Julian was required to speak between 10 to 12 minutes. He spoke for 11 minutes, 27 seconds. He qualifies. For the table topics, Pat spoke on the worst weather encountered. She spoke for 1.5 minutes. She qualifies. Patty spoke on stranded due to weather for 2 minutes, 15 seconds. She does not qualify. Jessica spoke on complete this sentence for 2 minutes, 13 seconds. She does not qualify. No. You do qualify for the 31, so you qualify too, my bad. Steve spoke on ruined vacation because of weather for 1 minute, 38 seconds. He qualifies.
Alrighty, if we can vote for best table topic speaker. And I will turn the lectern back over to our Toastmaster.
Also cast vote for best speaker, that all three of them have qualified. I'm very mad at that. My other Toastmasters club doesn't do the voting, so I constantly forget to ask for it. You can also give the ballot counter here in the evaluations, any comments that you've written. Florida is actually very flat, and we are known for getting a lot of tornadoes, especially with the storms that come rolling through. The tornadoes we get in Florida, especially here in Central Florida, are the small ones. They're EF1, you'll almost never hear of EF2, and there's never anything stronger. It's the nature of the way our storms just come in. They're actually fairly localized. They don't get as expansive as the huge fronts that go flying across the Midwest. They're the ones that get the huge ones. So in that sense, we're a little bit lucky. And we do have the opportunity when the Earth tilt shifts us to winter and things cool down enough that we don't get the constant heating every day. And come winter, we don't get day after day of thunderstorms. During the summer, we are as bad as the worst places on Earth. In comparison to the Amazon Basin, Lake Victoria in Africa, the storms that we get during the summer match those, which those places get year-round. They're being closer to the equator. We have the strongest storms, rainfall, hail, all of that as the worst places on Earth. But we get the advantage of only having to see it for a little while. And for some reason, the tourists keep coming. It is time for me to pass on the meeting, as my role is done, to the general evaluator. Susan was dragged to Toastmasters by her husband, and is very glad he introduced her to this wonderful group. You should meet him sometime. Toastmasters has helped her in so many ways, and she is glad to give back by providing her personal opinion on how the meeting went and what, if anything, could be improved upon. Time flies when you're having fun, and it's hard to believe Susan has been a Toastmaster for over 7 years now. She is happy to use her experience to help evaluate the meeting tonight. Please help me welcome our general evaluator for this evening, distinguished Toastmaster Susan Morgan.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad to be here this evening. For our guests, what the general evaluator does is, first of all, we'll call on our evaluators who will evaluate the speeches of the prepared speeches. And then I will call on our functionaries to give us their reports. And then I will comment on the meeting as a whole so we know how we've done, if we've done well, or if we can improve. We like to improve Toastmasters. First, I'm going to introduce our evaluators, and I do believe, Steve, you're first. We had a change of venue and not a venue.
We're changing rooms now.
Yeah, we're changing rooms now, but we had a change, and Steve actually said he would come up and do an evaluation for Charlie. So please help me welcome Steve.
Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and honored guests, and especially Charlie. As I stand here, I think about your speech, and you'd asked me to look over a couple things and pay particular attention to your pose, your body language. And I was watching you tell that story, that very difficult story you're talking about, your history there. And one of the things I kind of noticed was your hands were like this quite often. And I think that's just part of the difficulty in your life that you had then. It was a very memorable speech. And I was, one of the questions is what indicated to you that the audience was entertained? And I stopped and I was looking around and I'm looking at people's heads and their eyes and they're riveted on you. That was a very good indication you had their attention right there and then. Describe the dramatic impact of the talk upon you. But you know, as I was listening to that, I just wanted to get that little boy and hug him, take that pain away from him. That's the impact it had on me, that speech that you had. Pouring out your heart there. And like I said, a traumatic event in your life. How well did the speaker build in your mind the vivid images? I thought you built a very vivid image. You were going from when you were a little boy in sequential order, okay, and you're building in everybody's eyes here a good, a history of what you were doing. And I thought it came by very, very clear. Did the speaker use vocal variety and body language? I think your variety language was good. I thought maybe your speech could be a little bit more louder, because I was way in the back over there, perhaps just a little bit louder. What parts of any of the speech did not work well? Perhaps maybe a pause here and there. Let people absorb what you're saying. How well did the speaker build to a powerful climax? Well, I think in your speech, telling your tale, how you built your ending, I thought was very good. Although perhaps maybe today you're very successful. I'm going to probably see that a little bit more. But I thought it was a very good speech, very very dramatic. I don't really know how you make it any better than that. It was very dramatic, and I think you need everybody's attention. We're talking about it, and this was the second time I heard it, but it was good. It was very, very good. All in all, I thought it was an excellent speech, and I look forward to more of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Our next evaluator is Micki D. Micki has just completed the Competent Communicator Manual, and now she is working on her Competent Leader Manual, which, according to her estimations, is going to take another 3 years. Shyly and totally stressed out about her role tonight, Micki is going to evaluate Jonathan's speech through the eyes of a child. Please help me welcome Micki D.
At least I learned how to walk to the lecture. Straight, calm. Madam General Evaluator, fellow Toastmasters, and dear guests. I have the opportunity tonight to evaluate Jonathan's speech. This is the first, and hopefully not the last, evaluation of one of John's speeches, but this is up to him. If he doesn't like what I have to say tonight, then I will stop, I promise. My problem with Jonathan's speeches in general is the fact that they are so good. I just cannot apply the sandwich method that we all usually do. If I have to say something good and at the end something good and in the middle some suggestions to make it better, I'm missing the suggestions. To me, it's perfect. It has always been. Jonathan is a natural speaker, and I loved all his speeches. And he improved. I liked all his speeches from the beginning, and he improved even more. It's a huge progress that I noticed in time. Starting with his voice and continuing with being more and more relaxed while giving a speech. Now tonight, his objectives were to entertain the audience by relating a personal story, objective accomplished, to organize an entertaining speech for maximum impact, build up the aspects of the experience to keep the audience entertained, and he did this wonderfully. I liked very much when he talked about his daughter Kaylee being a 14-year-old and having a certain behavior as for her age, and him trying to imitate her behavior. And also his solution as a father, I started to scream too. Another aspect that I liked very much, I consider it touching, when he said about him usually putting his hand in the sand and let it go away, but this time I wanted to be a father. Very, very touching. Also, as I said, you are a natural speaker, and you are optimistic. Your presentation and speech organization were simple, so the audience could enjoy without making an effort to understand the story. You use vividness and twists when talking about the alligator and the snake. I tried to find something to suggest. In this case, I would have used bring more color in my voice. Like when you talked about the alligator and the snake, like have a menacing voice. And when you talked about paddling the canoe, to use like antler movements, like, to exaggerate, to make it more fun. Also, you always look at the audience, and you did very good with the right side. With the left side, you stopped at the first table, so I could never catch your eyes while listening to your speech. Otherwise, I love that you connect with the audience immediately, and I'm looking forward to your future speeches. Madam General Evaluator.
You could say we've had some stormy weather the last 10 years at Central Florida Facilitators. Then again, perhaps it's just the normal challenges of life itself, relationships, teamwork, communication issues, and so it goes on. The story comes out, the rain falls. The storm comes out, the rain falls, the wind blows, our foundation is rocked. Then the sun shines, the rainbows glisten, the flowers bloom, and we are forever transformed. Evaluating the speech of Julian Cotto, please help me welcome Toni G.
I would say Julian aimed high, and he hit his mark right on. Now you had 10 to 12 minutes, and I only have 2 to 3, so I'm going to aim high, but my evaluation may not be as expansive as I would like. There is a lot to talk about. I love so many things about this speech. I'm beginning to think you may have hit perfection, Julian. It was awesome, so let me tell you specifically what was so great so we can all copy it in our next speech. First of all, your instructions were fairly general. And, I had all that information in front of me about what the project was, so it was amazing how he edited the story and selected the items that he talked about and the description that he gave to the items and to the character development. And your transitions were so smooth. It was absolutely effortless to follow the plot of the story. And that was one of your goals, that the plot would be very clear, that you wouldn't tell the person's whole life story, that you would make it fit the time limit. And you did that very well. Another thing that I liked was your introduction, and this was a model introduction. It not only set the stage for the topic that we were getting ready to hear, the story, but it also told us where you were at in the manual, and the manual that you were using. And I think that's important because this is an advanced manual. We don't get to hear a lot of these types of presentations. So I think it inspired people to listen in a way they may not have listened very actively to how was he going to tell this story. The description, the dialogue, you were to use dialogue, you did that, Daddy said this, the little girl said, Mommy, I don't want to go. But what was so specific and perfect about the presentation was that you actually stood still most of the time. You know, and we're sometimes overly concerned with moving over here and moving over here and getting in front of the lectern and moving and expressing ourselves. But you didn't do that except when the words indicated you should do that. Bang, bang! You were right on. You increased the volume of your voice. Your gestures matched the words that were coming out of your mouth. And you did that over and over again so that your stillness and then the movement created the mood for you to tell the story and for us to understand the point you were trying to make. This was a beautiful speech. Micki, I can't think of anything to tell this guy. I've got all these positive things written down on the paper. Awesome job. Thank you for teaching us how to do this in an exceptional manner. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Toni. Now comes the time when our function, or actually need a timer's report first. Ro, can we have a timer's report, please?
Yes, ma'am, and hopefully I'll get my math right this time. Steve spoke for 3 minutes, 21 seconds. He qualified. Micki spoke for 4 minutes and 8 seconds. She does not. Toni spoke for 3 minutes and 18 seconds. She qualifies.
So go ahead and cast your vote for those Toni and Steve. And the next thing that I get to do is ask our grammarian how expansively we've done this meeting.
Members who have used the word of the day: Ro, Linda, Charlie, Julian, Stephen, Lynn, Susan, and Toni G. Everybody else sweet whatever. The colorful phrases. Linda, I thought it was pretty cute that you said you didn't have an expansive budget, so you want to get that word of the day out so you didn't have to pay. So I did that. Jonathan, do something every day that scares you. I have a story with that, but we'll skip it. Julian, aim high and hit your mark. Stephen, the bolts aren't that bad, but they're strong enough to kill you. And the tourists still keep coming. That's the colorful phrases that I have for today. Thank you.
And our counter to help make up the bank, please help me welcome Jessica.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. This was an interesting experience. The first half of the meeting, we're all pretty good. The second half, kind of tanked. Here's an update. Toni, and I also felt like I was on patrol, so I've counted them even though I haven't counted them in the totals. Toni had 1 and 3 double clutches and a couple you-knows, for a total of 4. Ro, I had 2 double clutches. Linda Earl, I had 1 double clutch. Stephen Morgan, 2 double clutches. Charlie, and I was listening, 0. Jonathan had 1 double clutch. Julian, and I was listening, and you had 0. That was pretty impressive. Between 3 speakers, we had 1, and that was almost barely happened. Lynn, I had 2 ahs and ums and 1 double clutch. Pat, I had 2 ahs and ums, 1 double clutch, and 2 you know. Patty, I had 1 ah. Steve, I had 8 ahs and ums and 8 double clutches, for a total of 16, and 1 just for goodness sake. Susan, I had 2 double clutches, and Micki D, I had 8 ahs and ums and 5 double clutches. So for every infraction, 10 cents goes to the kitty, except for our guests, of course, or those who haven't given their icebreakers. And if it was more than 10, you're limited to $1, lucky you.
awesome job tonight. We started on time thanks to Pat, got us going, and our president greeted our guests and gave them a warm welcome. That we always do that, but it's nice to see. Our Toastmaster had interesting facts, and you also moved the lectern away for the speakers. I thought that was well done. You did forget the timer report for the speeches. That happens. Table topics were done very well. She's still gonna keep it. I don't get out of it. Lynn, you did a wonderful job. Those questions were great. The only thing was you called on an evaluator, but I don't think it was really announced very much that he was an evaluator, so, you know, that if you don't know. So just to let you know on that, but otherwise, very, very good. Steve, I love your evaluation. You did the sandwich method, gave Charlie the good points, gave him some room for improvement, and then gave him some good points again, so he'll want to speak again. We all know. Micki, you did an excellent job, despite what you say. You did the sandwich method, even though you didn't think that you could, you managed to do it, and it is difficult. And the only thing I can say is what Toni has actually told me before, and Stephen, and this goes for Toni since she couldn't find anything, is if you get to the point where a speech is just dang near perfect, start giving them things that they could do if they did the speech in a different way. If they made it a humorous speech, or if they made it an entertaining speech, or whatever. That sometimes will help me get something, at least, to say that they can improve upon. It's really tough. And Toni, of course, your evaluation was very well done. You didn't have the sandwich method because you didn't have anything to room to improve, but you know how to do it, and I think you were right on the money. So, I think that we are all done for my part tonight. So please help me welcome back our president, Toni G.
Voting for most improved Toastmaster, or we did that already? We did it?
No, not yet.
Oh, we didn't do it. You gave me a most improved. We didn't vote yet. We didn't finish the voting. If you didn't vote, I know some of the, on one of the slips it says most improved or something, but we do it separately. So there may be more people. Just hang on. And Tim Chastain, did you get a sheet for Tim Chastain? No.
I don't even know what that is.
No, another award thing?
It would be a blank one.
No. I had most improved, type table topics, best evaluator, best speaker. You know what I have here? I'll just go ahead and we'll give it later. Let me move ahead because of the time. I want to thank our guests for being here. I'm very interested in how you found the meeting. Steve, was this your first time here?
First time.
It was. How did you find the meeting?
I found it on the internet, just a little here for Toastmaster.
No, did you like it?
Oh,
how did you?
I liked it very much. I thought it was very good. I enjoyed the speeches, and I had a great time.
Okay, good. Thanks for coming and doing that.
I myself enjoyed the meeting. I thought I was going to fall asleep or get bored after working 8 hours, but I was really entertained. And it was great, and I'm hoping to learn a lot from you guys. I enjoyed
Keep
it.
coming back. What was your experience like?
The topics that they talked about, the stories that are very entertaining.
How did Roe do? She was great.
Yeah.
She did her job well.
I thought that was excellent meeting, and good speeches.
Yeah. Thank you. start with, we didn't finish most improved yet. Did you collect any ballots for most improved? What? Just now? Did you get your ballots? Julian's got one? Okay.
If they're not qualified for the time.
Yeah, there's no time.
No, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So we're good.
Well, and he took it.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you. All right, award time. Most improved Toastmaster this evening goes to our lovely lady in blue, Pat Stogner. Most improved. Best table topics. Yes, I got 3. Well, go back. We give an award called the Tim Chastain Award, which is obviously everybody participates and reaches their mark. They bat high and they reach the mark. Tim Chastain Award tonight goes to Stephen Morgan. Great preparation. Yeah, you do. Need one more. Best Evaluator, Toni G. Pat, do you have any announcements about the room arrangements? Because we need to clean up our individual areas and get the room sorted out. Want to tell us about that? What you need?
Today, all we have to do is make these chairs in rows. The tables have to go back where they were.
Oh,
Which really, that one goes out front, that one goes in front of the old thing or whatever that is.
yeah. So we're moving all the tables?
And the tables, this one goes over here.
Okay.
As far as
And
next
the
week,
chairs?
next week is a banquet.
Next week is a banquet. We need to talk about
So,
that. What time would you like, what time are you going to set up next week? Let's go right
I
into
think
the
that we could be
banquet.
here an hour early.
5 o'clock. Okay, we can get into the building at 5. Do you need more than Patty to come help you?
Patty is going to help me with the decorations, and if anybody, and Susan's willing to help, so if we have to move tables and chairs and stuff like that instead of haven't spoke to Gail, so we'll get with Gail and get that.
Gail is managing the food. If you haven't contacted her with information, please.
Or, yeah, bring, like, we're asking maybe to bring a covered dish or something to share.
Okay, that's great. And Susan, I'll get with you about the awards.
Okay.
Any questions that anybody has about the banquet next week? Okay, we'll have greeters. We need people to sign in, just like a regular meeting. We're gonna have food, so come a little bit early, maybe 6:15. People will be here at 5, so you can come before that as well. And you may get a couple emails from me this week. Most likely, read your emails. Lynn, you want to talk about the final meeting, or you can do it next week, or you can send us an email?
Okay, I still have a lot of, I'll just talk to people before I leave.
Okay, I didn't sign up at all, so I'm happy to do that. Okay, Jessica, do you have anything about our June 30th, or do you want to make an announcement next week?
I do not right now, but I will next week.
Right. Well, the invitations have been sent out to almost 200 people. If you have people that you would invite that you don't see on that invite list, because all the names I think are listed there, or a lot of them are, just go ahead and forward the invitation, or your own invitation, or the one that I created, to the people that you would like to invite. I did talk to Jeremy Udell, who's going to be here to do the installation of officers. We are changing the program to do the installation of officers first, because he has a meeting he needs to go to. He has done an awesome job as our area governor, so I really wanted him to be here for at least part of the meeting, and he wanted to be here. So we're just going to reverse the order of how we normally do the banquet, and I think everything will work out fine. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to our guests. Stick around if you have any questions. Somebody have a sign-in sheet so we know how to get in touch with the guests?
There should be guest cards in the packet.
Or guest cards.
So it was passed around. There's guest cards in the packet.
Okay, but I don't know if anybody collected them. Okay.
I know it was
Okay.
filled out.
Jessica, just stand up for a second. This is Jessica. If you could just meet with her before you leave the building, all of our guests, I appreciate that. Oh, and I did talk to Jason Dykes, who was a guest a couple of weeks ago. He is going to be here next week. Very, very interesting joining. We had a great conversation. Okay. So, meeting adjourned.
Julian. Hi, Elda. Hi.
Another day, another
Another dollar.
There should be a slip actually inside your. Got all sorts of handouts today. The 19th I won't be here. No, okay. It's our, sorry, I'm trying to remember our guest photo. It's our annual, semi-annual banquet, so it's a little different than most of our meetings. Most of our meetings are run like this, where you have the speakers and you have the different pieces and parts of the meeting. Everything is planned ahead. It is all planned ahead, so you sign up when you want to speak and such like that. So that was the same handout that she was.
What about this? How much is the membership once you start?
Sure. So it's actually a really good deal. My personal opinion. There's a couple aspects of it. One is the international dues, so those are $36 for 6 months. And then we charge for local club dues only $9, so it's $45 for 6 months.
For 6 months? Okay. To be able to come local.
Yep, that's it. $45 every 6 months. We prorate it because we run like April to October and October to, so depending on where you join it. And then when you first join, there's an additional $20 new member fee. What that does, it gets you into the system. It gets you signed up. You get a Toastmasters magazine, which is actually pretty decent, surprisingly, once a month. And it gets you and it also gets you your first manuals. And with that, you get the first communication manual, which has all your first 10 projects in it. I have one handy, but I can show you a little bit what that is.
And then when am I required to sign up?
When?
Yeah.
You can do it right now if you like, or we can, or the next time.
Maybe the next time I come.
Next time you come, yep.
Yeah, and I can just pay for it, check for.
Yep, the check is usually the easiest way for check or cash. We don't really have a good way to take credit
And
cards.
then for.
This is misleading. So if you join today,
I know it goes down
26, that would be that you're going to join in.
Okay, girls, can you move your books to the chairs? Thank you very much, so we can put these all back.